A lot of people say that there's a lot of truth and honesty in comedy. As important as authenticity is, another important aspect of joke telling is the punchline, which often relies on exaggerating things in order to make everyone laugh. When comedians get their own shows or movies based on their lives, it's a given that viewers will want to know what came from real life and what wasn't. When Everybody Hates Chris debuted in September 2005, it was heavily promoted as being loosely based on the childhood of Chris Rock. What exactly is true about Everybody Hates Chris, and what's exaggerated or simply inaccurate? Here's what was true about Everybody Hates Chris. Time period.
Wrong.
Everybody Hates Chris takes place in the early to mid 80s, with the first episode opening up in the year of 1982 when Chris Rock turned 13. Now, the real life Chris Rock was born in 1965 and would have turned 13 in 1978 if the time period was accurate. While creating the show, Chris said that the reason why it takes place in the 80s as opposed to the 70s is because he felt the 70s had been parodied enough in television with shows like That 70s Show, so they decided to move it to the 80s. Bussing. Accurate. The show takes place in Bedford-Stuyvesant, also known as Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, which is accurate to where Chris really grew up, even though he was originally born in South Carolina. Rock was bused to an all-white school. We lived in Bed-Stuy, one of the most famous ghettos in the world. My mother and father wanted me to go to a better school, so I was bused to this poor white neighborhood. I was the only black boy in my grade for most of the time. I was a little guy too, a skinny runt. In his 1994 stand-up set, Big Ass Jokes, Rock said that usually when you get bused to school, you get bused to a better neighborhood to get a better education. This didn't happen. Instead, he got bused to a neighborhood worse than the one he lived in. They hated Chris because his family had more money than them. They didn't even have much money, but they had more than them.
We had more money than them. And right then I learned my lesson, boy. Nothing that a white guy with a penny hates more than a nigga with a nickel.
The segregation of New York schools had always been a problem. During the 1970s, when Chris was in junior high, 4 boroughs of New York between the Bronx, Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens had about 600 elementary schools. Nearly half of them were either 90% or more white or 90% or more black. In other words, there were black schools and there were white schools. The New York State anti-busing law would be passed by the state in May of 1969, which was supposed to be the step towards desegregation. The integration of some of these New York schools led to high racial tensions between black students and white students. Some parents had pulled their students out of the public school in favor of private institutions. Bullying. Accurate. Rock has always made it known that he was bullied while growing up in school. Most of it stemming from him being one of the only black kids in the entire school.
Hey, little dude from across the street. Let me hold $1.
Beat up every day. I got called nigger every day. Girls and boys every single day.
The series portrays this aspect of Rock's life pretty accurately. In 2020, while promoting the new season of Fargo, Rock spoke on his experiences growing up at the New York Festival. When I was in school, when I was a young boy, no one was more racist and mean than the Italians. I mean, the Irish were close, but not like the Italians. It was a whole other level racism. So yeah, it's in my bones. Joey Caruso. Accurate. In the series, Chris is tormented by Joey Caruso. The surname Caruso comes from Italian ancestry, but his looks resembled more Irish than anything. Chris's real-life bully didn't go by Joey Caruso, but instead, Eric. The real last name of Eric goes unidentified according to David Moskowitz, Chris's best friend from junior high, who was the basis of the character Greg. Greg. Accurate. In the series, when Chris first moved to Brooklyn, he was bused to school hours away to Corleone Junior High. His best friend in the series was Greg, a Jewish kid who also got bullied. The two made an instant connection. Turns out Greg was a real person in Chris's life, who went by David Moskowitz.
In real life,
I didn't know.
I hung out with this guy, Davey Moskowitz.
Oh, David.
And yeah, because the Jews would get beat up too.
A season 1 episode titled Everybody Hates Greg shows Chris visiting Greg's house for the first time. Moskowitz confirmed this story in an interview, saying when his father came home after a full day of work, he was a little upset that he had to drive Chris home because he lived on the other side of town. Moskowitz said he realized the Chris he grew up with turned out to be Chris Rock after watching an interview on Larry King where Chris mentioned his name. Moskowitz got in touch with Chris's wife at the time and earned himself a pair of tickets to the next time Chris went on tour. Moskowitz said he did ask Chris if he was the inspiration for Greg.
That was the character Greg was based on me. And the character looks so much like me, you know, almost impeccably. The stuff I wore, this is what I got to add. What is true is the look of the character looks like me, and what I was wearing. I wear these striped shirts, what I call the Ernie and Bert striped shirts. It's uncanny. I'll give him that. The look of the character. So that is true.
Miss Morello.
Wrong.
There was no real life Miss Morello that was in Chris's life in junior high. This was confirmed by Moskowitz himself. Instead, the character of Miss Morello seems to be symbolism of the type of racism Chris was subjected to in his youth. Miss Morello represents liberal racism. You know, the kind of liberal racism we saw in Get Out. The liberal whites that would have voted for Obama for a third time if they could. Miss Morello inadvertently makes offensive racist comments towards Chris, but it might be in her naivety that saves her. She also fetishes black men, which explains her soft spot for Chris. Siblings.
Wrong.
In the show, Chris is the oldest child, and he's got a younger brother, Drew, and a younger sister, Tanya. The real-life Chris Rock has 7 siblings, which might have been too much to keep up for a family sitcom.
So I grew up in a crowded house, and when my mother was pregnant, she used to run a daycare center in my house. My house was crowded.
Drew and Tanya contain elements of Chris's brothers and sisters combined. The siblings of real-life Chris Rock consist of Charles, the half-brother, Andre, Tony, Brian, Kenny, Andy, the only daughter, and Jordan. Julius Rock. Accurate. The real name of Chris Rock's father was in fact Julius. Julius Rock delivered newspapers for New York Daily. Julius was a hard-working man, and Chris learned a lot of his work ethic from his father.
My father used to say to me, there's no such thing as early. You're either on time or late.
There's no such thing as early. It's just on time and late.
Rochelle Rock. Exaggerated. In the show, Chris's mother's name is Rochelle. In real life, her name is Rose. Rochelle is definitely one of the most exaggerated characters. She loved her family, but she didn't play. Rose Rock is a retired school teacher and author, both of which became passions of hers. She didn't constantly quit her jobs to rely on her husband's income.
I don't need this. My husband has 2 jobs.
Many fans of the show walk up to Rose just to ask her if she's just like Rochelle on the show. In response to that, Rose says that Rochelle is a little over the top, but the show is loosely based on their lives. You know, everything has a grain of truth in it, but a lot of it's just written for laughs. Upbringing. Accurate. According to a 2005 New York Post article, Chris Seeley grew up in the same Bed-Stuy neighborhood as the Rock family. According to him, the Rock family weren't necessarily poor. They were just cheap, which is accurate.
That's 49 cents of spilt milk dripping all over my table. Somebody gonna drink this milk.
In 1994's Big Ass Jokes, Rock states that when he was growing up, his mother never bought any name brand foods. Instead, she bought no frills food, white box with black letters that say rice.
You look at the back of the box for ingredients, that shit says, look at the front of the box.
So instead of Fruit Loops, Cheerios, or Frosted Flakes, we got
Cereal. Is there a prize inside? The prize is you don't starve to death. Bring it up.
Big piece of chicken. Accurate. Chris's father, Julius, worked multiple jobs to keep the lights on. He worked so hard that one thing he had to look forward to was the big piece of chicken. In a 2005 Chicago Tribune article, it was revealed that Chris himself once took the piece from his father. I was watching the show and going, yep, that happened. I really did eat the big piece of chicken.
When I was a kid, my mama would lose her mind if one of us ate the big piece of chicken by accident. What the fuck? You ate the big piece of chicken?
Haven't I told you, do not eat the big piece of chicken?
GED. Accurate. Eventually, getting bused to school and getting beat up every day took a toll on Chris, and his grades started to suffer. Chris had to repeat the 10th grade, but he refused. Instead, he dropped out of high school and went after his GED. The series ends in a cliffhanger where Rochelle holds the results of his test, but the episode ends before the audience finds out the results. Real life Chris Rock dropped out of school after the 10th grade and passed his GED. After picking up a few random jobs, including one at Red Lobster, he decided to take to the stage one night in 1984 at Catch a Rising Star, where he became the Chris Rock we all know today. While a lot of the trauma in Everybody Hates Chris is played for laughs, the bullying left deep wounds in Rock that he says he hasn't actually faced until today through therapy. While making the series, in a 2005 interview, Rock stated, "When I get out there, it doesn't even really matter that it happened to me. It matters that it's funny."